Allegro by Chinzer is a very charming Baroque piece in binary form, and for the grade 4 cellist this is a very important moment because it's a piece written for the cello. It's an indigenous piece of repertoire as opposed to one of the many arrangements that all of our pupils will have been given up to this point. And I think partly because it's also much longer than anything they are likely to have played before, there are issues here to do with pacing and stamina. The most important thing, I think, is from the beginning, there are also issues here of intonation. The piece begins in a slightly challenging manner with a bare fifth across the string A to D. That is to say, A string to D string, fourth finger D, fourth finger G, which is asking quite a lot given that that is probably our weakest finger. There are, of course, plenty of other ways that could be fingered, and it would probably be a useful exercise for any aspiring cellist to experiment with several different versions. But never a bad idea to begin with a fourth finger because it will put quite a lot of emphasis on the need to strengthen the weak digit. The second half of that opening theme gives us quite a lot to think about with the bow. The bow distribution is very obviously awkward. You have that single quaver and then three quavers slurred together. And in order to make that not sound like an enormous bulge on the first note, the student is going to have to learn to slow down the pace of the inward coming bow and also to adjust the weight so that the force of the arm coming in doesn't create an unwanted sudden crescendo. For that reason, actually, it's an extremely good exercise, and the possible use of the dynamics from loud to soft also require quite a lot of thinking about. In the third line of the piece, we get the very first of the ornaments in the piece, and these are helpfully annotated in the printed part in 2 sets of sextuplets. And I think that's a very sensible way to approach it with any aspiring student, because trilling can very easily turn into something that sounds a bit like a dentist's drill if we're not careful. And drilling the finger to be actually in time with a trill is a very good exercise in itself. When we get to the second theme of the piece, the downward moving chromatic scale, that's really very tricky, I think. And again, it requires you to have extremely good use of independent finger action. It does also, though, give us an opportunity to remind a pupil why it is that learning a chromatic scale is a good thing. And I think it's unexpected somehow within this Baroque piece to have something quite as chromatic as that. So a nice moment of something rather different. There are lots of options for fingerings which would suit all kinds of different learners. For somebody who's really very capable and likes the idea of adventure, you could start with a 4 to a 1 going across. As the piece develops, you could have open strings, or you could have stopped notes, but I think that's very much a decision left open to the guidance of the teacher according to the level of the pupil. I think, like most of the Baroque pieces at this sort of level, the success of the performance is going to depend a very great deal on very confident and vivid dynamics, particularly where it goes up into fourth position at the end, where we need to feel triumphal about arriving at the end safely and in one piece.